icy heart of 1932 Prague, a chilling murder unfolds on the snow-draped Charles Bridge. Dr. Karel Novak, a historian chasing the secrets of the alchemical Codex Aureus, is found dead, a black chess knight clutched in his hand. Hercule Poirot, with his unrivaled little gray cells, steps into a deadly game of deception. As bodies fall and cryptic nights appear, he unravels a web of greed, revenge, and hidden shame among a cast of suspects. An opera diva, a jealous scholar, a secretive librarian, a wealthy magnate, and a mysterious priest. On a frozen bridge where saints stand silent, only Poirot can checkmate a killer before the final move. Dive into a mystery where every clue is a gambit, and the truth lies in the shadows. Chapter 1. The Chill of Prague. The winter of 1932 had descended upon Prague with a ferocity that seemed to still the very heartbeat of the city. The Vltava River, a ribbon of ice beneath the ancient arches of the Charles Bridge, gleamed coldly under a sky heavy with the threat of snow. Hercule Poirot, his small frame swathed in a meticulously tailored overcoat, stepped from the Orient Express onto the platform of Praha Hlavní nádraží, his polished shoes clicking crisply against the frost-dusted stone. His mustache, waxed to perfection despite the bitter cold, quivered slightly as he exhaled, his breath forming fleeting clouds in the air. He had come at the urgent summons of his old friend, Dr. Karel Novak, a Czech historian of considerable renown, whose letter had hinted at a matter both delicate and pressing, though maddeningly sparse in detail. "Mon ami," the letter had read, "your little gray cells are needed in Prague. Meet me at midnight on the Charles Bridge. Trust no one until we speak." The cryptic tone had piqued Poirot's curiosity, and now, here he was, in a city cloaked in frost and secrets. At the Hotel Europa, a grand edifice of Baroque elegance, Poirot settled into his suite, its velvet drapes and gilded mirrors a comforting contrast to the chill outside. A note awaited him on the mahogany desk, penned in Novak's precise hand. "Midnight, the Charles Bridge. Come alone." The hour was late, but Poirot, ever methodical, adjusted his pocket watch, donned his heaviest scarf, and set out into the night. The streets of Prague were silent, save for the occasional crunch of snow underfoot or the distant toll of a church bell. The city seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the drama about to unfold. The Charles Bridge, a Gothic marvel spanning the frozen Vltava, was deserted when Poirot arrived. Its statues, saints and martyrs carved in stone, stood like silent witnesses, their faces half obscured by the swirling snow. The moonlight cast long shadows, and the cold bit at Poirot's fingertips, even through his gloves. He paced slowly, his eyes scanning the darkness, his mind alert. At precisely midnight, the distant chime of the old town hall clock echoed across the river. Poirot's gaze, fixed on a solitary figure at the bridge's center, slumped against the base of the statue of St. John of Nepomuk. His heart quickened. "Dr. Novak," he called softly, his voice swallowed by the wind. As he approached, the scene clarified with dreadful certainty. Dr. Karel Novak lay dead, his body crumpled in the snow, his overcoat stained with a vivid scarlet that spread like a grotesque halo. His throat had been cut with surgical precision, the wound clean but brutal. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand steady, and examined the body. Novak's eyes, wide with shock, stared unseeing at the stars. In his right hand, clutched with a rigor that spoke of his final moments, was a single chess piece, a black knight, its ebony surface gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Poirot's gray cells stirred, the first threads of a pattern forming in his mind. This was no robbery, no act of random violence. The chess piece was a message, deliberate and taunting. He rose, his eyes sweeping the bridge for clues. The snow around Novak was undisturbed, save for a single set of footprints leading to and from the body, already blurring under fresh flakes. Poirot noted their size, large, masculine, with a deep tread suggesting boots. The killer had been bold, striking in the open, yet careful, leaving little trace. Poirot's gaze lingered on the statue above, its bronze plaque glinting. Had the saint seen the murderer's face? He permitted himself a wry smile. "Non, Hercule, the saints do not speak, but the gray cells, they will." Within minutes, the clatter of boots announced the arrival of the Prague police, summoned by a passing watchman who had glimpsed Poirot's lantern. Inspector Václav Dvorak, a broad-shouldered man with a face as weathered as the bridge itself, took charge. His mustache, less refined than Poirot's, bristled with suspicion as he eyed the diminutive Belgian. "You are the famous Hercule Poirot, yes?" he said, his English heavily accented. "What brings you to this grim scene?" Poirot explained his connection to Novak, presenting the letter with a flourish. Dvorak, though skeptical, recognized Poirot's reputation and grudgingly allowed him to assist, provided he did not interfere. Poirot's attention returned to the chess piece, now in an evidence bag held by a young officer. "This knight," he murmured. "It is the key, but to what lock?" He questioned Dvorak about Novak's recent activities. The inspector revealed that Novak had been researching a lost medieval manuscript, the Codex Aureus, rumored to hold alchemical secrets. He had been due to meet several colleagues that evening, any of whom might have crossed the bridge. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Alors, we have our dramatis personae. The curtain rises and the mystery begins." As the police cordoned off the scene, Poirot took a final look at the frozen bridge, its statues standing sentinel over the tragedy. The snow continued to fall, softening the edges of Novak's blood, but it could not erase the challenge laid before Hercule Poirot. A murder, a chess piece, a manuscript of secrets. The game was afoot, and Poirot's little gray cells were already at work, seeking the order beneath the chaos. Chapter 2. The Gathering of Suspects. The morning after Dr. Karel Novak's murder, Prague awoke to a city dusted with fresh snow, its beauty marred by the grim news spreading from the Charles Bridge. Hercule Poirot, ensconced in the opulent dining room of the Hotel Europa, sipped his tisane, his sharp eyes scanning the morning papers. The headlines screamed of the historian's death, but they offered no insight, only sensationalism. Poirot's mind, however, was far from idle. The black night found in Novak's hand, the cryptic note about a midnight meeting, and the whispers of the Codex Aureus. These were the threads of a tapestry he must weave into clarity. The Prague police, under Inspector Václav Dvorak, had grudgingly accepted Poirot's involvement, and now the investigation demanded the assembly of those who had known Novak best. The suspects, Poirot knew, held the key to the puzzle, and he would observe them with the precision of a watchmaker. Inspector Dvorak, his broad frame filling the doorway, arrived at the hotel promptly at 10. His face, etched with the weariness of a man accustomed to Prague's darker corners, softened slightly as he greeted Poirot. "We have summoned Novak's associates," he said, his voice gruff but respectful. "They are waiting in the salon, a motley crew, if you ask me." Poirot inclined his head, adjusting his pristine lapel. "Motley, perhaps, Inspector, but it is in the contrasts of character that the truth often hides. Let us meet them." The salon, with its crystal chandeliers and velvet-upholstered chairs, was a stage fit for the drama about to unfold. 5 individuals awaited, their faces a gallery of unease, each seated as if poised for flight. Poirot entered, his small stature commanding attention, his mustache a beacon of fastidiousness in the somber room. Dvorak introduced the suspects, and Poirot committed each detail to memory, his gray cells cataloging every gesture, every flicker of expression. First was Elena Vrubel, an opera singer whose beauty was as renowned as her tempestuous nature. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and her emerald eyes flashed with defiance, though they darted nervously toward the door. She had been Novak's lover until a public quarrel ended their affair 6 months prior. "Carrel was a genius," she said, her voice low and musical. "But he was impossible. I was at the opera house, rehearsing, when he was killed." Her alibi, Poirot noted, rested on the word of a stagehand, easily swayed by her charm. Next was Professor Antonin Svoboda, a historian whose rivalry with Novak was the stuff of academic legend. His thin lips curled into a sneer as he adjusted his spectacles, his fingers stained with ink. "Novak was a showman, not a scholar," he sniffed. "I was at the university, preparing a lecture, until late." Yet his eyes avoided Poirot's, and his hands twitched, betraying a man less certain than his words suggested. Ludmila Kovar, a librarian from the Strahov monastery, sat primly, her hands folded in her lap. Her plain gray dress and severe bun gave her the air of a nun, but her pale face flushed when questioned. She had worked closely with Novak, cataloging his research on the Codex Aureus. "I was at home, reading," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I live alone, so no one can confirm it." Poirot observed her trembling fingers, wondering what secrets lay behind her reticence. Jan Holub, a wealthy industrialist, lounged in his chair, his tailored suit exuding confidence. His funding of Novak's research was well known, as was his obsession with rare artifacts. "I was at my club, playing cards," he said, his tone breezy. "Plenty of witnesses, though I doubt you'd trouble them." His smile was too easy, Poirot thought, like a man accustomed to buying his way out of trouble. Last was Father Dominic, a Jesuit priest whose serene demeanor belied an unsettling intensity. His dark robes contrasted with his pale, almost translucent skin, and his eyes gleamed with a fervor that Poirot found disquieting. "I was in prayer at the Clementinum," he said softly. "The sacristan can vouch for me." Yet his hands, clasped tightly, bore calluses that suggested labors beyond the spiritual. Poirot paced the room, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate. "Dr. Novak was murdered with precision, and a black knight was left in his hand. This is no mere trinket but a message. Did any of you know of his interest in chess?" Silence followed, broken only by Elena's sharp intake of breath. "Carrel played chess, yes," she said, "but I know nothing of a knight." The others shook their heads, their denials too swift, too uniform. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the Codex Aureus? What can you tell me of this manuscript?" Ludmila spoke first, her voice gaining strength. "It is a medieval text, said to contain alchemical secrets. Karl believed it held the key to transmuting base metals into gold." Svoboda scoffed. "A fairy tale for fools. Novak was obsessed, chasing myths. Holub leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. If it exists, it's priceless. I funded Novak to find it, not to die for it. Father Dominic's lips moved silently, as if in prayer, but he said nothing. Poirot noted each reaction, his mind a chessboard where every move was calculated. Dvorak, growing impatient, pressed for alibis. Elena's stagehand was unreliable, Svoboda's lecture unconfirmed, Ludmila's solitude unverifiable, Holub's club a den of cronies, and Father Dominic's sacristan vague. Poirot, however, was less concerned with alibis than with motives. The Codex, with its promise of wealth or power, was a magnet for greed, envy, or fear. But the chess knight suggested a mind that delighted in games, in taunts. Was the killer among these five, or did they merely circle the truth like moths around a flame? As the interviews concluded, Poirot lingered by the salon's window, gazing at the snow-draped spires of Prague. The suspects dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the corridor, each carrying secrets Poirot would unearth. Dvorak joined him, lighting a cigarette. "What do you make of them, Monsieur Poirot?" he asked. Poirot's lips curved slightly. "They are like the statues on the Charles Bridge, Inspector. Each presents a face to the world, but beneath lies a story untold. The night, the Codex, the murder, they are connected, and I, Hercule Poirot, will find the thread that binds them." He turned from the window, his mind alight with possibilities. The Black Knight was a challenge, a move in a game he had not yet mastered. But Poirot was no novice. He would study these players, their fears, their desires, their lies, and when the moment came, he would checkmate the killer. For now, he returned to his suite, where a chessboard awaited, its pieces arranged to mimic the mystery. The knight moved in an L shape, unpredictable, elusive. Poirot placed the Black Knight in the center, his gray cells already plotting the next move in this deadly game. Chapter 3. The Shadow of the Codex. The snow fell relentlessly over Prague, cloaking the city in a hush that seemed to mock the turmoil of Hercule Poirot's investigation. By mid-morning, the Hotel Europa's warmth offered little comfort as Poirot sat in his suite, his fingers steepled, his eyes fixed on the Black Knight chess piece, now safely stored in an evidence box by Inspector Dvorak's men. The piece was no mere ornament. It was a cipher, a deliberate flourish left by a murderer who reveled in their own cleverness. Poirot's little gray cells churned, piecing together the fragments of Dr. Karel Novak's final hours. The Codex Aureus, that elusive manuscript of alchemical lore, loomed large in his thoughts, its shadow stretching across the motives of the suspects he had met the previous day. To unravel the mystery, Poirot resolved to trace Novak's steps, and so he set out for the Strahov Monastery, where the historian had spent his final days. The monastery, perched on a hill overlooking Prague, was a fortress of stone and silence, its library a treasure trove of ancient texts. Poirot's polished shoes echoed on the polished marble as he entered the theological hall, its frescoed ceiling soaring above shelves laden with leather-bound tomes. Ludmila Kovar, the librarian, awaited him, her gray dress as somber as the winter light filtering through the high windows. Her face, pale and drawn, betrayed a sleepless night, and her eyes flickered with unease as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did not expect you so soon." "Time, Mademoiselle Kovar, is the enemy of truth," Poirot replied, his tone gentle but probing. Dr. Novak's work on the Codex Aureus. Tell me all you know." Ludmila hesitated, her fingers twisting a stray thread on her sleeve. She led him to a secluded alcove, where Novak's research notes were spread across a table, a chaos of papers annotated in his meticulous hand. "The Codex," she began, "is a legend, a 13th century manuscript said to encode the secret of transmuting lead into gold. Karel believed it was hidden in Prague, perhaps within this very library. He was close to deciphering its location, but he guarded his findings jealously." Poirot's eyes scanned the notes, noting cryptic symbols and references to alchemical treatises. One page caught his attention, a diagram of a chessboard, with the knight's L-shaped path marked in red ink. "This," he said, pointing, "did Dr. Novak speak of chess in relation to the Codex?" Ludmila shook her head, her flush deepening. "Not directly. He mentioned the knight once, saying it was the key to the puzzle, but I thought it a metaphor." Poirot's mustache twitched. A metaphor, perhaps, but also a clue, echoing the black knight found in Novak's hand. As Ludmila sorted through the papers, Poirot observed her closely. Her movements were precise, but her hands trembled, and her glances toward the library's shadowed corners suggested fear. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "you were close to Dr. Novak. Did he entrust you with anything? Perhaps a page of the Codex itself?" Ludmila's eyes widened, and for a moment Poirot thought she might flee. "No," she said, too quickly. "I only catalogued his notes. I know nothing more." But her voice faltered, and Poirot's gray cells registered the lie. He did not press her, choosing instead to let her unease simmer. Leaving the library, Poirot walked the monastery's cloisters, the cold air sharpening his thoughts. Novak's research had stirred dangerous waters, threatening someone enough to kill. The Codex's promise of wealth was a potent motive, but Poirot sensed a deeper undercurrent, perhaps fear of what the manuscript might reveal. Returning to the hotel, he found Inspector Dvorak awaiting him, his face grim. "We found something in Novak's coat," the inspector said, producing a folded scrap of paper. On it, in Novak's hand, were the words, "The knight moves twice." Poirot's pulse quickened. The phrase was no idle scribble. It was a warning, a clue to the killer's next move. That evening, the Hotel Europa was thrown into chaos. A piercing scream echoed from the second floor, and Poirot, dining alone, hurried toward the sound, Dvorak at his heels. They found Elena Vrubel slumped in the corridor outside her room, a livid bruise blooming on her temple. She was alive, but dazed, her emerald eyes clouded with confusion. I don't remember," she murmured as Dvorak's men helped her to a chair. Beside her, glinting in the lamplight, lay another black knight, identical to the one found with Novak. Poirot knelt, examining it without touching. "Mon Dieu," he whispered. "The knight moves again." Elena, revived with brandy, claimed she had been returning from a late rehearsal when she was struck from behind. "I saw no one," she insisted, her voice trembling with a fear that seemed genuine, though Poirot noted the theatrical lilt in her tone. Dvorak's men searched her room, but found nothing amiss. No papers, no codex, only costumes and sheet music. Poirot, however, lingered on the Black Knight. Its placement was deliberate, a taunt to both victim and investigator. The killer was playing a game, and Poirot was determined to learn the rules. Back in his suite, Poirot spread Novak's diagram and the cryptic note before him. "The knight moves twice," he murmured, tracing the L-shaped path on the chessboard he had set up. 2 victims, 1 dead, 1 attacked, 2 nights. The pattern was emerging, but its purpose remained elusive. Was the Codex the prize, or a distraction? And why target Elena? Her connection to Novak was personal, not scholarly, yet the night suggested she was part of the killer's design. Poirot's thoughts turned to the suspects. Ludmila's nervousness hinted at hidden knowledge, perhaps a secret Novak had shared. Svoboda's envy could mask a deeper grudge. Holub's wealth agreed for the Codex's power. Father Dominic's piety seemed at odds with his intense gaze, and Elena's attack raised questions about her role. Victim or accomplice? The monastery, the chessboard, the alchemical manuscript, all were pieces in a puzzle that Poirot's gray cells were assembling, slowly but surely. As midnight approached, Poirot stood at his window, gazing at the snow-draped Charles Bridge in the distance. The saints' statues seemed to watch him, their stone faces impassive. The killer was bold, striking twice in as many days, each move marked by a black night. Poirot's mind raced, calculating, probing. The Codex Aureus cast a long shadow, but it was the human heart, its passions, its fears, that drove this crime. He would return to the suspects tomorrow, their words and silences revealing more than they knew. For now, he retired to his bed, the chessboard on his nightstand a silent challenge. The night had moved twice, but Hercule Poirot would not be outplayed. Chapter 4. The Alibis. Unravel. The gray dawn of Prague seeped through the heavy drapes of the Hotel Europa, casting a pallid light over Hercule Poirot as he sat at his breakfast table, his tisane cooling untouched. The events of the previous night, the attack on Elena Vrubel, the second Black Night, had sharpened his focus, his little gray cells humming with the rhythm of a chess game nearing its critical moves. The phrase, "the night moves twice," echoed in his mind, a taunt from a killer who delighted in their own cunning. 2 strikes, 2 nights, but the motive remained as elusive as the Codex Aureus itself. Poirot knew the suspects' alibis, fragile as they were, held the key to unmasking the truth. To test their stories, he resolved to observe them in a setting where pretense might falter, a dinner where wine and tension could loosen tongues. He proposed the idea to Inspector Václav Dvorak, who, though skeptical of Poirot's methods, agreed to arrange the gathering. "They're nervous, Monsieur Poirot," Dvorak said, rubbing his weathered chin. "This dinner of yours might shake something loose." By evening, the hotel's private dining room was prepared, its long mahogany table set with crystal and silver, a stark contrast to the grim purpose of the occasion. The suspects arrived one by one, their faces a study in guarded unease, each aware that Poirot's sharp eyes missed nothing. Elena Vrubel entered first, her bruise concealed by powder, her crimson gown a bold declaration of resilience. She took her seat with a performer's grace, though her fingers toyed nervously with a wineglass. Professor Antonin Svoboda followed, his academic stoop more pronounced, his spectacles glinting as he avoided Elena's gaze. Ludmila Kovar, in her usual drab gray, sat at the table's edge, her eyes downcast, as if hoping to vanish into the wallpaper. Jan Holub strode in, his tailored suit exuding confidence, a cigar smoldering between his fingers. Father Dominic was last, his priestly robes lending him an air of solemnity, though his pale hands clasped and unclasped with subtle agitation. Poirot, at the head of the table, surveyed them like a conductor before a symphony. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice smooth as the claret being poured. "We dine together not for pleasure, but to seek the truth. Dr. Novak's murder and the attack on Mademoiselle Vrubel are pieces of a puzzle, and I, Hercule Poirot, will assemble it. Let us speak plainly." His words hung in the air, met with uneasy silence. The first course, a delicate consommé, was served, and Poirot steered the conversation to Novak's work. "The Codex Aureus," he said, "was Dr. Novak's obsession. Did he share its secrets with any of you?" Holub leaned forward, his eyes alight. "Karl promised me the Codex would be mine to fund," he said. "A manuscript like that could make a man richer than kings." Svoboda snorted, his voice sharp. "Novak was a dreamer, chasing fairy tales. I told him the Codex was a myth, but he wouldn't listen." Ludmila's spoon clattered against her bowl, and she murmured, "He believed it was real. He said he was close to finding it." Father Dominic's voice was soft, almost hypnotic. "Some truths are best left buried. The Codex speaks of forbidden knowledge." Elena, sipping her wine, laughed bitterly. "Karl cared more for his books than for me. If he found the Codex, he kept it from us all." Poirot noted their dynamics: Holub's bravado, Svoboda's disdain, Ludmila's reticence, Dominic's cryptic piety, Elena's calculated charm. He shifted to their alibis, probing with surgical precision. "Professor Svoboda, you were at a lecture, oui? Yet no one recalls seeing you after 8. Svoboda's face reddened. "I was in my office, revising notes, scholar's work late." Poirot turned to Holub. "Your club, monsieur, is a place of loyalty. Would your friends lie for you?" Holub's smile tightened. "They'd have no reason to. I was there until 1. Ludmila, questioned about her solitary evening, stammered. "I was home, as I said. I have no one to confirm it." Father Dominic's alibi rested on the sacristan, but when Poirot pressed, he admitted the man had been half asleep. Elena's stagehand, Poirot knew, was unreliable, swayed by her fame. As the main course, roast pheasant, arrived, Poirot observed their interactions. Elena flirted with Holub, her hand brushing his as she reached for the salt, though her eyes held no warmth. Svoboda muttered about Novak's stolen glory, his envy palpable. Ludmila shrank from the conversation, her gaze fixed on her plate. Father Dominic spoke of divine judgment, his words chilling the table. "The wages of sin are death," he intoned, and Poirot noted Elena's shiver. The Black Knight, Poirot mused, was a symbol of strategy, of moves unseen. Was one of these 5 its master? After dinner, Poirot invited them to the salon for coffee, where he produced a chessboard, placing a Black Knight at its center. "This," he said, "is the killer's signature. Who among you plays chess?" Holub admitted to casual games. Svoboda claimed disinterest. Ludmila denied knowledge, and Dominic spoke of chess as a worldly distraction. Elena, however, paused. "Karl taught me a little," she said, her voice soft. "He loved the knight's move, its unpredictability." Poirot's eyes gleamed, a connection, however faint. As the suspects departed, Poirot lingered with Dvorak. "Their alibis are like snow, Inspector, beautiful until they melt under scrutiny." Dvorak grunted. "Holub's too smug, and that priest unsettles me, but we've no proof." Poirot nodded, his mind elsewhere. In his suite, he sketched the knight's moves on a chessboard diagram, tracing its L-shaped paths. The killer was taunting him, leaving clues to flaunt their cleverness. But why Elena? Her attack suggested she knew something, or was meant to seem so. Poirot's thoughts turned to the Codex. Its promise of alchemical power could drive men to madness, But the night suggested a personal vendetta, a game played for more than gold. He recalled Ludmila's trembling hands, Svoboda's bitterness, Holub's greed, Dominic's fervor, Elena's theatrics. Each was a piece on the board, but the player remained hidden. As he extinguished his lamp, the Charles Bridge loomed in his mind, its statues silent witnesses to a crime that demanded his genius. Tomorrow he would press harder, for the night's next move was coming, and Hercule Poirot would be ready. Chapter 5. The Second Strike. The morning light crept through the frost-etched windows of the Hotel Europa, but it brought no warmth to Hercule Poirot's thoughts. The attack on Elena Vroubel and the cryptic Black Night left in its wake had deepened the mystery of Dr. Karel Novak's murder. Poirot sat at his desk, his breakfast of croissant and tisane untouched, his eyes fixed on the chessboard before him. The Black Knight, a replica of those found at the crime scenes, stood alone at the board's center, its L-shaped possibilities mocking his efforts to predict the killer's next move. The phrase, "the knight moves twice," haunted him, and now, with 2 strikes, Poirot sensed the game was escalating. His little gray cells churned, seeking the pattern that linked the Codex Aureus, the chess pieces, and the suspect's tangled motives. Inspector Václav Dvorak telephoned early, his voice taut with urgency. "Monsieur Poirot, we have another death. Professor Antonin Svoboda, found this morning in his study. You must come at once." Poirot's heart quickened, though his expression remained composed. "Mon Dieu, the night moves again," he murmured, donning his overcoat and scarf. The streets of Prague, blanketed in fresh snow, seemed to whisper secrets as he made his way to Svoboda's residence, a modest townhouse near the university. The scene was grim. Svoboda lay slumped over his desk, his spectacles askew, a cup of coffee overturned, its dark stain mingling with papers. His face was contorted, a telltale sign of poison, and the faint scent of bitter almonds confirmed Poirot's suspicion: cyanide. Beside the body, stark against the clutter, rested another Black Knight, its ebony surface gleaming in the morning light. A single page, torn and yellowed, lay beneath it, covered in strange alchemical symbols. Poirot recognized it instantly as a fragment of the Codex Aureus, its presence a deliberate taunt. "The killer grows bold," he said to Dvorak, who stood glowering at the scene. "This is no random act, Inspector. It is a move in a game we have yet to understand." Dvorak's men searched the study, but Poirot's attention was fixed on the details. The coffee cup bore no fingerprints but Svoboda's, suggesting the poison had been added earlier, perhaps at the hotel dinner the previous night. The torn codex page was authentic, its script matching Novak's notes from the Strahov monastery. Poirot knelt, examining the Black Knight. It was identical to the others, carved with precision, its weight suggesting solid ebony. "A craftsman's work," he mused. "The killer chooses their symbols with care." Returning to the hotel, Poirot summoned the remaining suspects, Elena Vroubel, Ludmila Kovar, Jan Holub, and Father Dominic, to the salon. Their faces, already strained, grew paler at the news of Svoboda's death. Elena's hand flew to her bruised temple, her eyes wide with fear. "First Karel, then me, now Antonin," she whispered. "Who's next?" Holub's jaw tightened, his cigar unlit for once. "This is madness," he growled. "I funded Novak, not this bloodshed." Ludmila, her hands clasped tightly, said nothing, her gaze fixed on the floor. Father Dominic murmured a prayer, but his eyes, sharp and unyielding, met Poirot's with unsettling calm. Poirot addressed them, his voice steady. "Mesdames et messieurs, the killer leaves a black knight at each scene, a signature of their intent. Professor Svoboda's death confirms that this is a campaign targeting those linked to the Codex Aureus. I ask you now, what did Svoboda know that cost him his life?" Silence followed, broken only by Elena's nervous laugh. "Antonine was jealous of Karol," she said. "He thought the Codex was nonsense, but he wanted the glory of disproving it." Holub shrugged. "Svoboda was a nuisance, always prying into Novak's work. Maybe he found something he shouldn't have." Ludmila's voice, barely audible, cut through. "He visited the monastery last week, asking about Karol's notes. I told him nothing." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Ludmila's reticence was becoming a pattern, her fear palpable. Father Dominic spoke last, his tone measured. "The Codex tempts men to sin. Perhaps Svoboda's curiosity was his downfall." Poirot noted the priest's hands, their calluses stark against his pious words. A man of God, yet marked by labor, a contradiction to unravel. As the suspects dispersed, Poirot conferred with Dvorak. The inspector's men had traced the cyanide to a local chemist, but the purchase was anonymous, paid in cash. The Black Knights, too, were untraceable, their craftsmanship suggesting a bespoke order. Poirot's thoughts turned to Ludmila. Her nervousness, her proximity to Novak's research, made her a linchpin. He resolved to follow her, suspecting she held a piece of the puzzle. That afternoon, Poirot trailed Ludmila. As she left the monastery, her steps hurried through Prague's winding streets. She entered a nondescript boarding house in the old town, glancing over her shoulder. Poirot, concealed by a doorway, waited. Hours passed, and as dusk fell, Ludmila emerged, her face ashen. She clutched a small parcel, her movements furtive. Poirot followed at a distance, his heart pounding. At a secluded alley, she stopped, looking around, then slipped the parcel into a mailbox. Before Poirot could act, she vanished into the crowd. Returning to the hotel, Poirot learned from Dvorak that Ludmila had fled, leaving a note at the monastery. "I know too much. Forgive me." The police were searching for her, but Poirot suspected she was no fugitive, but a target. The parcel, he deduced, might contain the missing codex page, hidden to protect it, or herself. The killer's pattern was clear. Eliminate those who threatened to expose the codex's secrets. Svoboda, with his prying, had been a threat. Ludmila, with her knowledge, was next. Poirot retired to his suite, the chessboard before him. He moved the Black Knight, tracing its erratic path. "The knight moves twice," he murmured, "and now a third time. But why?" The codex was the lure, but the murders felt personal, driven by a motive deeper than greed. Ludmila's flight, Elena's attack, Svoboda's envy, Holub's ambition, Dominic's fervor, each was a piece, but the board was incomplete. Poirot's gray cells worked tirelessly, seeking the order beneath the chaos. Tomorrow, he would find Ludmila, for she held the key to the knight's next move. As he extinguished his lamp, the Charles Bridge loomed in his mind, its frozen arches a silent witness to a game Hercule Poirot was determined to win. Chapter 6. The Knight's Gambit. The fog of early morning hung low over Prague, shrouding the spires and cobblestones in a veil of mystery that matched the enigma Hercule Poirot sought to unravel. The murder of Professor Antonin Svoboda marked by the third Black Knight, had tightened the noose of suspicion around the remaining players in this deadly game. Ludmila Kovar's sudden disappearance, coupled with her cryptic note, "I know too much," had set Poirot's little gray cells ablaze. The Codex Aureus, with its alchemical allure, was the axis around which these crimes revolved. But the Black Knights suggested a mind that played not for gold, but for vengeance or control. Poirot, seated in his suite at the Hotel Europa, traced the knight's L-shaped moves on his chessboard. The phrase, "the knight moves twice," now hauntingly outdated. 3 moves, 3 knights, and Ludmila's flight pointed to a 4th. Time was short, and Poirot knew he must act swiftly to outmaneuver the killer. Inspector Václav Dvorak arrived at the hotel, his face etched with frustration. "We've searched half of Prague for Ludmila Kovar," he growled, tossing his hat onto a chair. "She's vanished like a ghost. Her boarding house is empty, and that mailbox you saw her use? Nothing but old letters." Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. "A ghost, Inspector?" "No, Mademoiselle Kovar is no spectre. She is frightened, yes, but alive, and she holds a secret the killer fears." He recounted his observation of Ludmila's furtive parcel, suspecting it contained the missing codex page. Dvorak dispatched men to monitor the mailbox, but Poirot's mind was already elsewhere, plotting a trap to draw both Ludmila and the killer into the open. At the Strahov Monastery, Poirot revisited Novak's notes, hoping to uncover what Ludmila might have hidden. The librarian's desk, now abandoned, yielded a single clue. A faint pencil mark on a blotting pad, tracing the outline of a knight's move. Poirot's pulse quickened. "The knight again," he murmured. "Always the knight." The pattern was deliberate, a chess game played in blood, with each move targeting those who threatened the Codex's secrecy. Ludmila, as Novak's confidant, likely knew its hiding place. Svoboda's death suggested he had stumbled too close to the truth, and Elena's attack, perhaps a warning or a misstep, indicated she was entangled in ways Poirot had yet to discern. By midday, Dvorak's men located Ludmila in a squalid tenement on the city's outskirts, her face gaunt with terror. Poirot and Dvorak arrived to find her barricaded in a cramped room, clutching a worn satchel. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, her voice trembling. "I didn't kill Carrel, I swear it, but I know too much, and they'll come for me next." Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, the truth is your shield. What did Dr. Novak entrust to you?" Tears welled in her eyes as she produced a folded parchment from the satchel, a single page of the Codex Aureus, its alchemical symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. "Carrel gave me this," she whispered. "He said it was the key to everything, and I hid it in the monastery's archives, but someone knows." Poirot examined the page, its cryptic script a labyrinth of meaning. Ludmila confessed that Novak had feared betrayal, suspecting someone close was after the Codex. "He spoke of the knight's move," she said, "as if it were a code for his enemies." Poirot's gray cells surged. The knight's erratic path, 2 steps forward, 1 aside, mirrored the killer's strategy. Unpredictable, yet calculated. Ludmila's parcel, she admitted, was a decoy, meant to mislead whoever pursued her. The real Codex page had never left her possession until now. Determined to force the killer's hand, Poirot devised a bold gambit. With Dvorak's approval, he arranged for a public announcement in Prague's evening papers. "Librarian Ludmila Kovar to reveal Codex Aureus location at midnight on the Charles Bridge." The bait was set, with Ludmila under police protection and Poirot's plan hinging on the killer's arrogance. "They cannot resist," he told Dvorak. "The Black Knight is their pride, their signature. They will come to silence her." As midnight approached, the Charles Bridge stood silent, its statues looming like judges in the moonlight. Dvorak's men, concealed in the shadows, watched as Poirot and Ludmila, her face hidden by a hooded cloak, took their positions near the statue of St. John of Nepomuk. The air was thick with tension, the fog curling around the bridge like a living thing. At the stroke of midnight, a figure emerged from the mist, cloaked in black, a knife glinting in their hand. Ludmila gasped, but before the figure could strike, Dvorak's men surged forward, pinning the assailant to the ground. The hood fell back, revealing Jan Holub, his face contorted with rage and desperation. "I only wanted the codex," Holub shouted as he was restrained. "I didn't kill anyone." Poirot stepped forward, his eyes piercing. "Monsieur Holub, your greed betrays you, but are you the knight, or merely a pawn?" A search of Holub's pockets revealed no chess piece, only a crumpled note with Ludmila's name and the bridge's location. Poirot's mind raced. Holub's attack was impulsive, driven by the promise of the Codex's wealth, but the precision of Novak's and Svoboda's murders pointed to a more calculating mind. As Holub was led away, Poirot turned to Ludmila, who trembled in the cold. "You are safe now, mademoiselle, but the game is not over. The true knight remains at large." He escorted her to the safety of the police station, his thoughts churning. Holub's actions were a distraction, a clumsy move that did not fit the killer's pattern. The Black Knights, the Codex, the murders, they formed a sequence, but the motive was still obscured. Was it the Codex's secrets, or something deeper, rooted in betrayal or vengeance? Back at the hotel, Poirot sat before his chessboard, moving the Black Knight across its squares. The killer was close, their arrogance growing with each strike. Elena, Dominic, and now Ludmila remained, each a potential target or player. The Charles Bridge, with its frozen arches and silent saints, held the answer, and Poirot's gray cells were closing in. Tomorrow, he would confront the suspects with new intensity, for the night's gambit was nearing its end, and Hercule Poirot would not be outplayed. Chapter 7. The Final Move. The fog that cloaked Prague had lifted by morning, revealing a city sharp with frost and secrets. Hercule Poirot stood at his window in the Hotel Europa, gazing at the Charles Bridge, its ancient stones now a stage for 3 violent acts: Dr. Karol Novak's murder, Elena Vrubel's attack, and Professor Antonin Svoboda's poisoning. The Black Knight, that enigmatic signature, had appeared at each scene, a taunt from a killer who played chess with human lives. Jan Holub's desperate lunge for the Codex Aureus the previous night had been a false move, a greedy blunder in a game orchestrated by a far subtler mind. Ludmila Kovar, safe but shaken, had entrusted Poirot with the Codex's final page, its alchemical symbols a cipher yet to be cracked. Poirot's little gray cells were alight, sensing the endgame approaching. The killer's pattern was clear, but their motive, buried in the shadows of envy, greed, or vengeance, remained just out of reach. Tonight, he would force the final move. Inspector Václav Dvorak, his patience fraying, joined Poirot in the hotel's salon, where the remaining suspects, Elena Vrubel, Ludmila Kovar, and Father Dominic, were summoned. Holub, now in custody, was no longer a player, but his actions had clarified the stakes. "Monsieur Poirot," Dvorak said, lighting a cigarette. "Holub swears he only wanted the codex. He denies the murders. I'm inclined to believe him. He's a fool, not a killer." Poirot nodded, his eyes gleaming. "Oui, Inspector. Holub is a pawn, moved by greed. The true knight is among us still, and I, Hercule Poirot, will unmask them." The salon was heavy with tension as the suspects arrived. Elena, her bruise faded, but her eyes wary, wore a sapphire dress that caught the chandelier's light. Ludmila, clutching her satchel, seemed smaller, her fear etched in every line of her face. Father Dominique entered last, his robes pristine, his expression serene yet impenetrable. Poirot stood at the room's center, his small frame commanding silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear as a bell. "3 crimes have marked this affair: a murder, an assault, and a poisoning, each signed with a black knight. The Codex Aureus has been the lure, but the motive is not gold. It is personal. Tonight, we end this game." He paced, his polished shoes silent on the carpet, and recounted the facts. Dr. Novak was killed on the Charles Bridge, a black knight in his hand, his research on the Codex nearing its climax. Mademoiselle Vrubel was struck, another knight left as a warning. Professor Svoboda was poisoned, a Codex page beside him. And last night, Monsieur Holub sought to steal the Codex's secret, but he is not our knight. The killer moves with precision, their taunts deliberate. But why? Poirot turned to Ludmila, his gaze gentle but piercing. "Mademoiselle Kovar, you hid the Codex's final page, entrusted to you by Novak. Did he speak of enemies?" Ludmila's voice trembled. "He feared betrayal, but named no one. He said the knight's move was a warning, a code for danger." Poirot nodded, then faced Elena. "Mademoiselle Vrubel, your attack was no accident. Were you a threat to the killer or a distraction?" Elena's lips parted, her voice sharp. "I loved Carol, but I knew nothing of his work. Someone wanted me silenced or framed." Her eyes flicked to Father Dominic, who remained still, his hands folded. Poirot's attention settled on the priest. "Father Dominic, your piety is admirable, yet your hands bear the marks of labor, not prayer. Your knowledge of the Codex is deep, your presence at every turn convenient. Tell me, what is your true role?" Dominique's eyes met Poirot's, unblinking. "I am a servant of God, Monsieur Poirot. The Codex's secrets tempt men to sin, and I sought only to guide Novak away from danger." His voice was calm, but Poirot sensed a crack in the facade. The little Belgian clapped his hands, startling the room. "Alors, let us reconstruct the game. The Black Knight is the killer's signature, its L-shaped move a symbol of their cunning. Novak's death was the opening, eliminating the man who neared the Codex's truth. Svoboda's poisoning removed a rival who pried too closely. Mademoiselle, Vrubel's attack was a feint meant to confuse or warn. But the motive is not the Codex's gold. It is revenge, rooted in a past Novak uncovered." Poirot produced the Codex page, holding it aloft. "This, mes amis, reveals more than alchemy. Novak's notes hint at a scandal, a family disgraced centuries ago, tied to the Codex's creation. A descendant of that family would kill to keep it buried." He turned to Dominic, his voice sharp. "You, monsieur, are no priest. Your calloused hands, your fervor, they betray a man driven by lineage, not faith. You are a descendant of the Wojtek family, wronged by Novak's ancestors in the 14th century. Novak's research threatened to expose your shame. We? Dominic's composure shattered, his pale face flushing. You know nothing, he spat, rising. Dvorak's men moved closer, but Poirot raised a hand. Confess, monsieur. You killed Novak to silence his discovery, attacked Elena to cast suspicion, poisoned Svoboda for his curiosity. The Black Knights were your flourish, a taunt to those who dared approach the truth. Dominic's eyes burned, then dimmed. Novak would have ruined us, he whispered. My family's honor, it was all I had. The Knights were my vow, to end it. He sank back, defeated, as Dvorak's men cuffed him. Poirot exhaled, his gray cells at rest. Holub's greed had been a sideshow, his attack on Ludmila a clumsy grab for the Codex. Dominic, the true knight, had played a deeper game, his vendetta cloaked in piety. The Codex page, now safe, held no gold, only history, a secret worth killing for to one man's twisted pride. As the suspects were dismissed, Poirot lingered with Dvorak. The game is won, Inspector, he said, but at what cost? The Charles Bridge, silent once more, bore witness to the truth uncovered by Hercule Poirot's unyielding logic. The final move had been his. Chapter 8. The Thaw. The icy grip of Prague's winter began to loosen, as if the city itself exhaled in relief at the resolution of the grim drama that had unfolded on the Charles Bridge. Hercule Poirot stood once more at his window in the Hotel Europa, his gaze fixed on the Vltava River, where cracks in the ice hinted at a coming thaw. The Black Knight's deadly game had ended, with Father Dominic, revealed as a false priest and heir to a centuries-old vendetta, now in the custody of Inspector Václav Dvorak. Jan Holub, driven by greed for the Codex Aureus, faced charges for his attack on Ludmila Kovar, though his role in the murders was merely that of a misguided pawn. The Codex's final page, its alchemical secrets intact, rested safely in the Strahov Monastery, entrusted to scholars who would guard it without bloodshed. Poirot's little gray cells, having unraveled the tangled threads of motive and murder, were at peace. Yet a quiet melancholy lingered. The cost of truth, he knew, was never light. The morning was crisp, the air carrying a faint warmth as Poirot joined Dvorak for a final meeting in the hotel's salon. The inspector, his usual scowl softened, offered a rare nod of respect. Monsieur Poirot, you've done what my men could not. Dominic's confession ties it all together. Novak's murder, Svoboda's poisoning, the attack on Vrubel. But those damned knights... He shook his head. Why such theatrics? Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile forming. Theatrics, Inspector, are the mark of a mind that craves control. Dominic's knights were his signature, a boast of his cunning, rooted in the shame of his family's past. He played chess with lives, but forgot that Hercule Poirot is no mere opponent. Dvorak produced a file detailing Dominic's true identity. Tomasz Wojciech, last of a disgraced noble line, whose ancestors had been implicated in a failed alchemical scheme tied to the Codex. Novak's research had unearthed records of their treachery, threatening to expose a scandal Dominic had vowed to bury. The Black Knights, crafted by a Prague artisan years ago for a forgotten chess set, were his personal touch, each one a symbol of his calculated revenge. He planned to stop with Svoboda, Dvorak said, but Ludmila's knowledge of the Codex page forced his hand. Poirot nodded. And Mademoiselle Vrubel's attack was a diversion, to muddy the waters. A clever move, but not clever enough. Poirot requested a final meeting with Ludmila and Elena, who arrived at the salon with contrasting demeanors. Ludmila, her face still pale, but her eyes resolute, clutched a notebook, her own continuation of Novak's work. "Monsieur Poirot," she said softly, "I will ensure Carol's research is preserved, but not for gold, for knowledge." Poirot inclined his head, approving her quiet strength. "You have courage, mademoiselle. The codex is safe in your hands." Yelena, radiant in a fur-trimmed coat, was preparing to return to the opera. "I'm no scholar," she said, her voice lighter than before. "But I loved Carol, in my way. I'll sing for him." Her smile was genuine, free of the artifice Poirot had once suspected. He wished her well, sensing her heart, though bruised, would heal. As the women departed, Poirot turned to the chessboard on the salon table, where a single black knight remained. He picked it up, its weight familiar now, and placed it in his pocket, a memento of a case solved by method and intuition. Dvorak, watching, chuckled. "You keep that, monsieur? A trophy?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Non-inspector. A reminder that even the most cunning player leaves a trace for the grey cells to find." By afternoon, Poirot prepared to leave Prague, his trunk packed, his ticket for the Orient Express secured. At the station, the Charles Bridge loomed in the distance, its statues standing sentinel as the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light on the melting ice. The saints, Poirot mused, had borne witness to the tragedy and its resolution, their silence a fitting counterpoint to the chaos of human passions. He boarded the train, his overcoat immaculate, his mustache perfectly waxed, and settled into his compartment. The Codex Aureus, with its promise of forbidden knowledge, would remain in Prague, its secrets locked away, perhaps forever. For Poirot, the true victory was order restored, the knight's gambit checkmated by logic and persistence. As the train pulled away, Poirot opened his notebook, sketching the knight's L-shaped path one last time. The game was over, but others awaited, for the world was full of puzzles, and Hercule Poirot was never far from the next. With a final glance at Prague's fading spires, he closed his eyes, content that the Charles Bridge, now thawing under the spring's first breath, would guard its secrets in peace.